This bridge should never have been this hard to build. 14 mi of water between New York and New England. That's it. This is the Long Island Sound crossing. For 70 years, experts have called it impossible. Too expensive, too controversial, too complicated. If you live on Long Island and want to drive to Connecticut, Rhode Island, or Boston just across the water, there is still no direct way. You can either pay for a ferry or crawl for 3 hours through some of the most congested roads in America. The designs are done, the engineering is proven, but every single attempt has died before a shovel touched the ground. And here's the crazy part. Other states have already built longer links in worse conditions for a fraction of this price. So why is this 14 mi gap still empty? Today, we're going inside New York's $55 billion plan to finally connect Long Island to New England and the uncomfortable reasons it keeps failing. Long Island has a problem. This is Long Island. Nassau and Suffolk counties alone are home to nearly 3 million people, more than half the population of Chicago and larger than 15 U.S. states. It is also one of the most isolated major population centers in America. Every single road connection to the mainland goes through New York City. There is no other way out. For a century, this gap divided the region. Long Island developed as a suburban bedroom community for New York City because that was the only place it could easily reach. Central Connecticut remained rural and underdeveloped because it had no connection to the wealth of Long Island or New York. Today, those same bridges that connect Long Island to the mainland have become the worst bottleneck in the Northeast. The Throgs Neck, the Whetstone. Together, they carry over 400,000 vehicles per day. During rush hour, a trip from Long Island to Connecticut that should take 20 minutes takes 3 hours. The only alternative is a ferry. It runs once an hour, takes 75 minutes to cross, and costs over $150 round trip per vehicle. To drive from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Port Jefferson, Long Island, a straight-line distance of 14 miles, you must drive 95 miles through New York City. But there's an even darker problem. In October 2012, Hurricane Sandy hit New York. Long Island residents were told to evacuate, but there was only one way out, through New York City. The highways became parking lots. Thousands of people couldn't evacuate in time. Over 40 people died in New York during the storm. Scientists project that by 2040, Category 4 hurricanes will regularly threaten the Northeast. When the next big one comes, millions of people will have the same single escape route they had in 2012 across these 14 miles. On paper, the case is obvious. In reality, that's where the trouble starts. The idea of bridging Long Island Sound is not new. In 1955, Robert Moses, the man who built the Verrazano, the Trebarra, the Bronx Whitest Stone, proposed a 6-mile bridge from Oyster Bay, Long Island, to Rye, New York. Moses had built every major bridge in New York. If anyone could do this, he could. But coastal residents on both sides erupted. They didn't want the traffic. They didn't want their views ruined. They didn't want change. By 1973, after nearly 2 decades of fighting, the federal government killed the plan. But the idea kept coming back in the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s. Each time, new studies, new proposals, new cost estimates. Moses's original proposal would have cost about $800 million in today's dollars. By 1975, a multi-bridge scheme came in at about $1.44 billion. By 2008, a private tunnel proposal from developer Vincent Palomini was priced at $10 to $13 billion. And in 2017, when New York's latest WSP feasibility study, modeled bridge, tunnel, and hybrid, was completed, $55 billion. WSP spent months analyzing 3 different routes across the Sound. They studied wind patterns, shipping lanes, environmental impact, seismic activity, construction logistics, and they concluded, yes, it could be built, but it would be the most expensive bridge in American history. WSP proposed 3 designs. First, an all-bridge solution. 6 lanes, cable-stayed towers rising 340 minutes or taller than any building in Connecticut. Foundations anchored 100 ft below the seabed. The deck spanning 14 miles across open water. It would rank among the longest overwater crossings in the Western Hemisphere, cost $16.5 billion. Second, an all-tunnel solution. Twin BS carved by tunnel boring machines the size of commercial airplanes running 150 ft below the seabed. 3 lanes in each direction with emergency cross passages every 500 ft. It would be deeper and longer than the Channel Tunnel between England and France, cost over $55 billion. Third, a hybrid, the same design Virginia used when they bridged Chesapeake Bay in 1964. Bridge approaches on shallow water near both shores. Then the road dips into a tunnel beneath the deep central shipping channel before rising back to a bridge on the other side. This design preserves shipping lanes, reduces the number of tall towers, and minimizes visual impact. It's also proven technology. Virginia's version has operated flawlessly for 60 years. Cost $35 to $40 billion. On paper, any of these would work. The engineering is proven, the designs are sound. WSP concluded the project was technically feasible. So in 2018, New York and Connecticut had everything they needed. A proven design, a clear cost estimate, a path forward. And then, nothing happened. Why? Ask anyone why the Long Island Sound crossing hasn't been built and you'll get 3 answers. First, the environment. Long Island Sound took 40 years and $4 billion to clean up. In the 1970s, it was so polluted you couldn't swim in it. Construction would dredge millions of cubic yards of sediment. Pile driving would disrupt fish-spawning grounds. Second, local communities. Connecticut's Gold Coast, Fairfield, Westport, Darien is some of the wealthiest real estate in America. Median home prices exceed $1 million. These residents don't want a 340 meters bridge tower visible from their backyards. On the Long Island side, Port Jefferson residents fear the opposite problem, that Connecticut commuters would turn their quiet village into a highway rest stop. At public hearings in 2018, residents on both sides showed up in force, united in opposition. And finally, politics. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont. On October 14, 2025, he was asked about the bridge proposal. Incredibly complicated, supremely expensive. Translation, we're not paying for it. And New York, they've been strategically vague, offering polite nods in press releases, but total silence when it comes to writing checks. The answer might have less to do with the environment, the residents, or the politicians, and more to do with profits. Every day, hundreds of thousands of Long Island commuters pass through these toll plazas. These crossings are operated by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, and they generate enormous revenue. In 2024, the MTA collected $2.3 billion in bridge and tunnel tolls. An estimated $1.2 billion of that came from Long Island commuters who have no other choice. Now imagine a Long Island Sound crossing opens. Traffic studies estimate 60% of Connecticut-bound traffic would divert to the new bridge. That's $700 million per year in lost revenue. Over 30 years, the typical lifespan of infrastructure bonds, that's $21 billion. Over 50 years, $35 billion. Or meanwhile, New York has spent billions on other transportation projects. Second Avenue Subway, $4.5 billion. East Side Access, $1 billion. Penn Station rebuild, $7 billion planned. All projects that bring people into Manhattan, none that let them bypass it. But there's one place that broke this cycle, and it might show us the way forward. 400 miles south of Long Island, there's a bridge that shouldn't exist. This is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel in Virginia. A 23 millimeter fixed link connects the north of Virginia Beach region to the Delmarva Peninsula. When construction began in 1960, critics called it insane. 23 mi across open water, 60% longer than Long Island Sound. The Chesapeake faced everything Long Island does and worse. The critics said it would be a financial disaster, that no one would use it, that the tolls would never repay the bonds. They built it anyway. On April 15, 1964, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel opened after less than 4 years of construction. Cost $200 million, about $2 billion in today's dollars. Long Island's hybrid design, $35 billion. That's 17 times more expensive per mile. Today, it carries 4 million vehicles per year. It paid off its bonds within 15 years. And here's the ultimate vindication. In 2025, Virginia is spending $757 million to expand it. But Virginia isn't the only place that proved impossible bridges can be built. This next bridge was designed by the same man who wanted to build Long Island Sound, Robert Moses. In the 1950s and 60s, Moses proposed two massive bridges, one connecting Brooklyn to Staten Island, the other connecting Long Island to Connecticut. Same designer, same era, similar opposition. When Moses announced the Verrazano, Brooklyn erupted. 800 families displaced. The Save Bay Ridge Association sued repeatedly. Brooklyn officials called him a dictator, but Moses had something Long Island supporters don't. He was chairman of the Tribera Bridge and Tunnel Authority, an independent authority with power to issue bonds, condemn land, and override local objections without mayoral or gubernatorial approval. Construction began in 1959. The bridge opened on November 21, 1964, on schedule, on budget. Today, it carries 200,000 vehicles per day. Moses tried to use the same authority for Long Island Sound, but by the 1970s, environmental laws had changed. The Clean Water Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, his power wasn't enough anymore, and the project died. So, is the Long Island Sound crossing dead forever? Not necessarily, because there are three ways this bridge could still be built, and each one has precedent. In 2025, Connecticut developer Stephen Shapiro revived the idea of a 14-mile bridge from Bridgeport to Long Island with an estimated cost around $50 billion. He's pitching the Long Island Sound crossing directly to President Trump, not as a New York project, not as a Connecticut project, as federal infrastructure. But there's a second path, one that doesn't depend on any president. What if New York and Connecticut created their own Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel District? A bi-state authority with one mission: build the bridge. Instead of needing approval from 7 different entities, the authority makes one decision and moves forward. And there's the third option, one that might be smarter than building a bridge at all. Instead of cars, trains, a 16-mi rail tunnel connecting Long Island's LIR to Connecticut's Shoreline East and Metro North. Then onward to Hartford, Providence, Boston. Travel time from Long Island to Boston would drop from 5 to 6 hours to 2.5 hours, and it would cost half as much. Modern tunnel boring technology, the kind used on London's Crossrail and the Gothard Base Tunnel, has dropped costs dramatically. A rail tunnel could be built for $15 to $25 billion. The thing is, Americans' confidence in rail mega projects has been shaken. California high-speed rail was supposed to cost $33 billion. It's now over $100 billion and still not operational. So, which path actually happens? As of December 2025, Shapiro's Trump pitch is the most active. He's meeting with federal transportation officials, presenting at industry conferences, building momentum. If Trump designates it a priority in 2026, federal funding could flow by 2027. Groundbreaking could happen in his second term. After that, the window closes. The next president might not care. Connecticut's governor might change. For 70 years, the Long Island Sound crossing has been the bridge that exists everywhere, except in reality. On paper, it solves some of the worst congestion in the Northeast. It gives millions of people faster access to jobs, hospitals, and schools. It offers a genuine evacuation route for an island facing stronger storms. Technically, it can be built. Other places already have. The difference isn't engineering, it's power. Those impossible projects had 3 things. Long Island still doesn't: federal backing, a dedicated authority, and the political will to actually break ground. What do you think? Is a Long Island Sound crossing an impossible dream or a deliberate failure of politics? And if you had to choose between a $55 billion highway tunnel and a rail-first tunnel under the Sound, which one should be built first? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the mega projects reshaping our world, make sure you're subscribed to Mega Builds.